Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, it's Michael, and welcome to a new kind of video here for the first time. So over the past couple of years, Ernie Ball has expanded their line of Slinky guitar strings. Previously they started at the 8-gauge extra Slinkies, and went up to the 12-gauge not even Slinkies. Now they go as light as the 7-gauge zippy Slinkies, and the 13-gauge mammoth Slinkies. Well, I'm not going to try these or the mammoth Slinkies out just yet. I did grab a few different sets at Guitar Center recently, and today I'm going to, shall we say, give them a test drive on some of my guitars. So don't think of this video as a review of Ernie Ball's new sets of Slinky strings. Think of it as more a video of me just test driving different sets of Slinkies. Now when I first started playing guitar, the first set of new strings I bought were a pair of regular Slinkies, the green pack. Famous 10 to 46 gauge, pretty simple. Then as time went on, I began experimenting with the hybrid Slinkies, 9 to 46, as well as the purple power Slinkies, 11 to 48. So when Ernie Ball expanded the Slinky line, I knew I had to try some new sets out. And that day has come, because now I'm going to be testing the Primo Slinkies, which are 9.5 to 44 on my beautiful Ibanez SV470, the 9.5 to 46 Turbo Slinkies on my Ibanez RG120, the 10 to 48 Ultra Slinkies on my Hamer Vector Flying V, and finally for real fun, the John Mayer 10.5 to 47 Silver Slinkies on my gray home-built Fender Stratocaster Deluxe with two Fender Wide Range humbucker pickups. The reason I'm using the silver Slinkies on this one is because this is the closest thing I have to a silver guitar. At least without spending close to $3,000 on John's signature PRS Silver Sky guitar. And along the way I'm going to give you some general tips about restringing, because I realize the Vector and the SV both have locking tuners, while the RG and the Strat both have conventional non-locking tuners. So if you don't know how to restring locking tuners, I'll show you how to do that in a second. So enough yakking, let's change camera angles and start restringing these guitars. Okay, now I mentioned that the SV and the Vector both have locking tuners. But the SV's locking tuners are a little bit different than the Vector's. Normally you expect locking tuners to be done up from behind like this, tightened or loosened. You put the string in, tighten them, and then tune them up. Well, on the SV, they're actually locking from the top here. If you can see that slot right there. You're meant to put a coin or a flathead screwdriver in there and that'll unlock the tuner. Unless... combination of them. Ah, there it goes. Okay. It's a combination of loosen the tuner on top, then keep turning it until the string pops out. Got it. I'm using a bottle opener here from my little fake Swiss Army knife for that. So you just turn it counterclockwise like anything else you'd loosen. And it helps to get the angle just right. Okay, oops. Unwind. There it goes. Okay, with the old strings off, now it's time to just give the guitar a quick wipe down. While I wipe the guitar down, I also might as well mention, I've been playing Ernie Ball strings ever since I started playing guitar back in high school. And for the longest time I've used the regular Slinkies in standard tuning for fixed bridge guitars, the hybrid Slinkies for tremolo guitars like this, and the power Slinkies for guitars tuned down below E flat or E standard tuning, like say D standard or drop C. And I've experimented a lot with different strings. I've experimented with Diodario, Dean Markley, GHS, pretty much all the string brands, and I've experimented with the Ernie Ball line as well. So now as I put the Primo Slinkies on, consider this a little more experimentation. So with these kinds of locking tuners, you put the string through, once it's loose enough from the top, there we go. Like that. Pull the string tight, like so. And while you keep some tension on the string, you have to lock the tuner back down with your whatever you're using. So I'm going to use this again. Tight. And then you can wind it on with the string winder. And it takes a couple of tries to get these tuners in to lock, like so. So I'm going to finish putting the Primo Slinkies on, and then I'll come back once that's done. Okay, with the new strings on, it's time to tune them up because they're nowhere near in tune. Luckily, I have just a tool for getting them in tune fast. The Roadie automatic string tuner. So what you do with the Roadie is you put it on, you set your tuning, so in this case standard E, put it on the first string tuner, and then just pluck the string and let it tune. And when it beeps, you move on to the next string. So we're in tune, but we're not done yet. New strings stretch out on their own, which means you got to break them in by gently pulling up on them like so. Obviously, don't pull too hard or you'll break them, especially if you have lighter strings like these 9.5 to 44s. Now that pulled the strings back out of tune, so we just got to grab the Roadie tuner and tune back up again. And then you just keep stretching and retuning until the string stops slipping out of tune. So I'll do that right now, and then I'll come back. And of course, once you're done tuning, make sure you trim off the excess string from the tuner, just to keep them out of your face. And be careful not to cut the actual string going towards the post either. Otherwise, you'll have to start all over again with new strings. Been there, done that. Oops. Well, guess what I just did there? I cut the actual string, not just the loose end, the string itself. You can't make this up, can you? And the high E right here. There we go. Nice clean headstock. Strings in tune. The SV is ready to rock again. Also, another tip for restringing conventional tuners. As you wind the strings around the tuners, you get what looks like little coils on the ends, like this, right? Which might be a little hard to push through the bridge or the tailpiece of the guitar when you remove them. So what I like to do is push the strings out through the bridge, then take my cutters and just cut the ball end off, like so. It may take more than one clip, especially for the wound strings. There it goes. And then this will allow you to just pull the string out through the front of the guitar like that. Primo Slinkies, 9.5 to 46. So on guitars with all 6 tuners on one side of the headstock like this. To restring conventional tuners, I bring the string 2 tuners beyond the one it's going to. So the low E string goes here, I'm pulling it there. Then put a kink in it like that. Alright, nice 90-degree turn. And then feed the string through the tuner right up to that point. Then keep some tension on it like that. Grab your string winder and start tuning her up. And be careful it doesn't coil up like that. You want it to stay out, straight out like this. That way it doesn't suddenly unsnap and hit you in the finger or the eye or something. And remember, when you first put the string on, it doesn't have to be completely in tune. You just have to get it to make a sound. So let me put the rest of the strings on and I'll be right back. Also be careful when you unravel the strings because they can unspring like that. Also, one last note about restringing conventional tuners that specifically applies to the plain or treble strings. Sometimes when you go to wind these strings on, you'll notice there's a gap between the first winding and the remaining windings that's a little lower. As you can see, that happened when I put the Silver Slinkies on my Strat. So to notice that, the easiest way to remedy it is unwind the string, then gently work the windings a little bit with your thumbnail like this. Feel in here the stubborn windings actually give way, move up, and then you can start tightening them. And then you can start tightening the tuner and winding the strings on again. There we go, the RG is now strung up. Time to tune it, and then I'll be back. And then I'll be back to compare all the strings on all the guitars. So, see you in a second. Okay, starting the demo with the Ultra Slinkies on the Vector. Let's see clean, distorted, and leads. Okay, time for some distorted riffs. Okay, because the Ultra Slinkies and the Silver Slinkies are both slightly heavier than the regular Slinkies, my usual strings for drop D, we're going to try them in drop D as well. Quick observation, I'm noticing the treble strings are still the same Ernie Ball 10, 13, and 17 gauge that I'm familiar with, whereas 48, 38, and 28, the Ultra Slinkies anyway, feel similar, but just a little bit more, which I think is what Ernie Ball was going after with these strings. And for drop D, the Ultra Slinkies 48 definitely holds the tension very nicely. And you can even slap on them too. Okay, time to grab the Strat and try the Silver Slinkies next. There we are. So as I tune up real quick, you may remember that the Silver Slinkies are literally half a gauge lighter than the Ultra Slinkies. So I'm wondering, will that make any kind of difference, especially on the Strat's longer 25.5-inch scale? Because the Vector actually has the Gibson 24 3/4-inch scale. That means with a slightly lower scale length, the tension gets a little looser, and you can use thicker strings a little easier. So let's find out. Okay, going to drop D real quick on the Strat, but after some noodling around in Standard, I think my theory is holding water. Because the Silver Slinkies feel almost exactly the same on a Fender scale length as the Ultra Slinkies do on a Gibson scale length on the Vector, for example. I'm not noticing much, if any, tension differences between the longer scale lengths of both guitars now. That could all just be in my head, though, so take that with a grain of salt, but I'm just telling you what I feel here. Anyway, drop D test, here we go. After trying the Ultra and the Silver Slinkies out, I'm definitely a big fan of both of them, both sets. In fact, I think the Silver Slinkies might be my go-to for Fender scale length guitars now, 25.5 inches, while the Ultra Slinkies might be my go-to for guitars with the Gibson scale length of 24 3/4-inch scale lengths. Now, so I'm trying out the strings, I'm definitely excited to try the Primo and the Turbo Slinkies, which, as the Primo Slinkies being 9.5 to 44 are lighter than what I'm used to, 9 to 46, while the Turbo Slinkies are slightly heavier than what I'm used to, at 9.5 to 46. So let's start with the SV and strung with the Primo Slinkies real quick. Okay, got the SV with the Primo Slinkies. Here goes the clean test. round strings on the Primo Slinkies definitely feel much, much more comfortable to bend. They still feel pretty resilient when you hit some hard power chords with them. And strumming open chords like that definitely feel just as resonant as the 9 to 46s I had on here before. So let's try some distorted riffs now with the Primo Slinkies. Okay, the Primo Slinkies are a lot of fun for leads, I can tell you that right now. I wonder how they're like for tapping, let's see. How about some expert mode tapping? Nostalgia playing that solo. I can remember trying to compose that thing right now, but that's another story. Anyway, Primo Slinkies I think might be my new favorites overall for tremolo guitars, though I'd have to try them out on a Floyd Rose guitar to be completely sure. Meantime, let's just switch guitars to the RG and be back. Okay, got the RG, and remember I set this guitar up to E flat standard, so we'll see how 9.5 to 46 handles half step below standard tuning. Initial thoughts on the Turbo Slinkies. First I was thinking, okay, not much difference here, but then when I actually bent, I do feel a slight bit of resistance now. And again, I don't know if that's all just in my head, so remember, take it with a grain of salt. Just telling you what I'm feeling. I'm feeling a slight bit of resistance with bends, but not so much so that my hands would start hurting. So let's go to a distorted tone for the rest. anybody knows how to play that part, not even Kerry King. Okay, before I get carried away with all my mindless shredding here, I think I've made my point. Let's go back to the couch so I can give you my final thoughts real quick. Okay, so in conclusion, I was definitely impressed with all 4 sets of strings. The Primos, the Ultras, the Turbos, and the Silver Slinkies. But that's all well known already. Everybody knows that about Ernie Ball strings. The Uber and the Silver Slinkies, however, definitely deliver that extra meat from the lower strings, being slightly heavier than a 10 to 46 set. And especially in drop D, that's important. I remember I once tried the Power Slinkies, 11 to 48 in just regular drop D, D-A-D, G, B-E, and the higher strings just felt too heavy for me in that tuning. So both those sets are definitely perfect for drop D for me. Meanwhile, the Primo and the Turbo Slinkies are just a shredder's dream set. Perfect for bending and tapping, while holding enough tension to remain in tune, which is something that lighter strings are definitely susceptible to. James Hetfield said that about lighter gauge strings when he was starting out. He would hit them real hard in the studio and they would slip right out of tune, hence why he prefers 11 gauge strings. But again, my hands aren't like his hands, so I need some slightly lighter gauge strings. This, however, won't be the end of my string experimentation, because if you remember the 7 gauge Zippy Slinkies, there's another brand that makes 7 gauge strings, and I'm definitely looking forward to a shootout between these 2 sets. Until then, I hope you guys liked the video, or at least found it entertaining. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Share this video with your friends, and if you were looking at some different Ernie Ball string sets, I hope I convince you to try some out. See you next time, and until then, rock on. Okay, come on. At least I'm starting the reel. At least I'm starting the blooper reel. Good. At least I'm starting the blooper reel off on a good note. Hey guys, it's Michael, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a kind of a different change of pace of video on the channel. This technically isn't. Think of it as more of a test drive for me. Think of it more as me just test driving different Think of it as more a... So enough yak, let's change... So enough yakking, let's change angles and start... Let's change camera angles. So I'll be right back when I put this... Okay, so I'll be right back when I put the... For one of them. The wound strings are especially light. The wound spin... Bleh.